All right, so I'm just taking a look at the oil markets. Last 2 weeks since the president took office, oil's actually moved lower. It's even lower today with these tariff threats. If we do see tariffs on Canada and oil is included, what do you see the impact being, and what do you see the impact, specifically when we're talking about Canada, of broader tariffs?
For broader tariffs and oil specifically, the impact would be quite large. We import an enormous amount of oil for refining here in the United States. That can't easily be offset. And overall, we import over $100 billion from Canada. This is largely in machinery, electronics, inputs to industry. These are highly integrated supply chains. This would really disrupt a lot of manufacturing here in the United States.
All right, so Canadian tariffs would impact manufacturing. I want to talk to you about Mexico because actually I didn't realize this. Mexico is a top auto supplier here to the U.S. What are some other areas that would be impacted outside of autos? I think that might be a surprise to a lot of people that we get so many imports of autos coming from Mexico.
Yeah, we get it. The North American auto supply chain is incredibly integrated. Your average car that's produced in the United States is going to cross the Canadian and Mexican borders about 6 or 7 times before it's completed. And that's another reason that bilateral trade deficits that Trump is complaining about don't really make a lot of sense, because the final good, once it comes across the border, a lot of that's embedded U.S. content. So those numbers don't really, they're not something you should really be thinking about.
All right. There's some reports out, and we're going to show the headlines in just a second, that Trump aides, they're trying to basically make an 11th hour effort to try to pare back these tariffs or do it in a more measured way. If we do see that happen, does that still impact the U.S. economy? I mean, if they dial it back, I mean, you know, it's a pretty aggressive tariff level the president was just talking about there in the Oval Office. If it's slightly less, does that significantly lessen the impact, or any increase in tariffs, specifically with our 2 very close trade partners that we have free trade agreements with, does that immediately impact the U.S. economy?
I mean, any tariffs will have some impact. Obviously, the more you scale it down or narrow it, that'll be a smaller impact. I mean, specifically, oil would be enormous. We import about $47 billion worth of minerals from Canada. That affects our defense industrial supply chains as well. So a broad across-the-board 25% tariff would be really massively disruptive. The more we narrow it, obviously, it's less so, but none of these are going to be very helpful for the U.S. economy.
All right. I don't know if you saw this, Philip. The president putting on Truth Social, his social media platform, essentially that any company, countries, we talk a lot about companies here, any countries that try to create currency that competes with the dollar, obviously referencing the BRICS nations, he would put 100% tariffs on, potentially at least. Talk to me about the potential impact of that. That seems like a very aggressive move and something that could lead to retaliatory tariffs as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's a point we haven't really raised when talking about the economic impact of the Canadian and Mexican tariffs. That's all saying that these are all impacts without any retaliation. So that's obviously going to happen as well. The other point I would say is there really are no other rival currencies to the dollar right now. It just doesn't exist. Obviously, Russia is very intent on having one because of how bad it's been impacted by our de-swifting of the Russian economy, but they've had no luck. I mean, this is not something that's an immediate problem by any means. The thing that makes it more likely is weaponizing of the dollar inappropriately, the way the president threatened to do with Colombia over the past weekend.